Hi, welcome to this episode of Herald Cafe. Today we've got a homegrown creative genius, Edwin Pinto. Hi, welcome to
Hi.
the studio and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nilankur. Thanks for having me.
Like Janota Goa is still an iconic brand, like homegrown brand from Goa. My first question will be to how did it came up about, what is your inspiration to start Janota Goa?
Actually, in Nilankur, Janota Goa, we did not consciously and deliberately start it.
Okay.
It is something that just evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
You see, before that, I have been into garments, so I was trained in the garment industry.
Mm-hmm.
I started off doing men's suits and formal wear,
Okay.
then went into ladies and children and industrial and everything I did almost everything with regard in the field of fashion, garments. Now, I personally always had a fascination for footwear.
Okay.
And when I was a student in the 70s and 80s, the choice for men's footwear was very limited.
Okay.
So we had only about 3 or 4 styles available at Batas and some stores. And so I decided as a tailor to experiment with footwear.
That is how it came up about.
That is how I started making shoes. I finally managed through a lot of trial and error, not knowing about the correct process of
The grammar of making shoes.
No, I was illiterate as far as that was concerned. So as a tailor, I finally managed to make a pair of shoes that was wearable. And I wore it around very proudly. And that was the time, I think it was in about 80, 81, that I bumped into Francisco Martins.
Okay.
And he was getting his group ready to go for the Asiads in Delhi. So he saw my shoes. And we struck a deal and he placed an order for 600 pairs of shoes.
That's a huge amount.
And I knew nothing about shoemaking. So I boldly accepted the order and I managed to find 4 shoemakers,
Okay.
traditional craftsmen. So we got together and within about 3 weeks we completed the order.
Wow.
And that is how I started learning the intricacies of shoemaking.
I'm sure that's a hands-on experience. That's the
Yeah.
like work experience. So when you were saying that you were trained in garments and stuff, did you go through any school to learn tailoring and stuff?
Yes, actually I joined a school in Bombay. I did a 1-year course
Okay.
initially. And there they taught us the British system of cutting
Okay.
and
Okay. Pattern cutting.
pattern making,
Yes.
etc. But that was only the start, because after that I came and then I worked for a while with a French guy who was running a boutique in Kalangut.
Okay.
So then I learned how the French guys did it. Eventually I studied the Japanese method
Okay.
from a Japanese lady who was working here in Panjim. And I found that the Japanese method of dressmaking was the best for our Indian figures, for the Indian bodies. So towards the end, when I was doing like bridal wear and evening wear, I used the Japanese method. So I have studied formally for a year there, and subsequently I studied.
Learned on the way. So when you were saying about the British method, the French method, the Japanese method, is there a Goan method also of pattern cutting?
The
Or
Goan,
Indian method?
the Goans actually, the Goan tailors followed the Portuguese method.
Okay.
In fact, not far from here, there was an institute where I had the privilege of working for a while, where the master was trained in Portugal.
Okay.
And even the literature that he had, the books and all were all still in Portuguese that we were then translating. So, and the same holds true for the shoemakers. The shoemakers also work with the Portuguese methods. So even their language, the tools, etc., were known by their Portuguese names.
Okay.
While in the other parts of India,
Mm-hmm.
both tailoring and shoemaking, they followed the British systems.
Well, historically, because Goa was under Portuguese, we did the Portuguese.
And
stuff.
there is a slight difference
Yeah.
in the methods.
Okay. Okay.
In garments, in the pattern making, there is a marginal difference. But in shoemaking, in the techniques and all, it's
Quite a lot.
it's quite huge.
Mm.
And I think the Portuguese system is a little more accurate, more focus on quality and precision
Then British.
than the British.
Okay.
Maybe I'm biased because that's the system I use.
Right. So my second question will be to what is the future you envision for Janota Goa?
Okay.
Yeah.
Nilankur, it's about 5 years that I am semi-retired.
Okay.
So I have put down the tools
Mm-hmm.
and I've got into another field of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I've handed over, my son has taken over the business.
Okay.
He also has had no formal training,
Mm-hmm.
but he's been playing around with the tools and with the
Which
craft
you,
since he was a
yeah.
baby, you know.
Yes.
And so he's taking it forward. He's working a little differently from what I was working. Like one of the things is that I had my own production unit, a studio here,
Mm-hmm.
because I was able to find craftsmen
Here.
in Goa.
Okay.
My last man worked till he was 94 years old.
Whoa.
And after that, now there are no more shoemakers in Goa who are actually making shoes.
That's sad.
And that was one of the reasons that I decided, okay, I mean, I tried a lot of ways to promote the craft,
Yes.
to teach it to people,
Yeah.
to encourage.
Yeah.
And I also tried bringing workers from outside Goa, but it didn't.
This government ITIs, they do not teach, or the NIFT do not teach shoemaking.
No, there's no shoemaking being taught anywhere in Goa, sadly.
And
Though-
if somebody wants to learn shoemaking, where will he go? Supposedly a Goan boy or a girl wants to learn shoemaking.
I believe that there is quite an advanced program in shoemaking in Chennai.
Okay.
Now, personally, for me, I did not like that idea because it's not really 100% handcraft.
Got it.
So to make the patterns, they would use the computers and they would use technology and stuff, which I prefer working with my hands absolutely.
And the person who was working till 90 years old, did not you devise some way to get the knowledge to a second generation somehow?
You know,
Like what was the problem?
in Nilankur, sadly, what I found the problem is that none of the new generation wants to be involved or even remotely associated with the craft of shoemaking. And the reason for that is that the shoemakers are supposed to be the lowest caste in our caste system.
Oh.
So what has happened, and I think we as a society are to blame for that, because we did not do justice to these people.
We did not give dignity to them.
We did not give dignity, we did not give respect on the one hand. And then on the other hand, the government came up with all these reservations and supporting these guys to do other stuff. So now most of these, the 90-year-old guy, his son is regional manager of LIC in somewhere in Maharashtra.
Got it, yeah.
And all these guys have studied well, but which is good in a way. But unfortunately, the craft has died.
In compared to that, what about Kolhapuri chapels? It is still thriving. How are they getting the artisans?
Somehow in Kolhapur the system has been more of a family business.
Oh, okay.
So somehow the families have kept, but there also it's I think at the way we are going, it's not going to last too long.
Okay, okay.
You know, unless we give them sufficient, good enough reason to carry on doing the work in terms of incentive and promotions, etc. It's not going to last so long.
Okay.
And the other thing is that generally the idea is that people prefer factory made stuff and they don't value this. So it's like a handmade slipper that costs you, let's say, 500 rupees. People will hesitate to buy because you can buy a factory made one for 100 bucks.
True.
So that is another reason why the handcrafted products are not selling too well.
It has become kind of a niche, like a niche product, you know, like only few people can afford. I think there's layers of factors affecting this handmade artisanal. So I think we're coming to an end towards our conversation. And Edwin, what will be your advice or a message to the young creative people who are coming up from Goa? You know, like because you were in this in this creative economy I'm saying creative economy because you have dealt with the marketing, you dealt with the business part of it. You handmade shoes, you know, like that way for last say 25, 30 years. You have seen it all. The whole now you're retiring, giving it out. So any kind of any highlight of your journey, and secondly, what you would like to say to the people who are trying to.
You know, I just like to share what somebody told me.
Yes, yes.
Because for me, I come from a family. My father was a doctor.
Okay.
So the idea of a doctor's son becoming a shoemaker was not really acceptable.
It is not.
It is not. But I came across people, specifically one or two guys who really supported. They saw that there was something different in me. And the advice that I received at that time was follow your heart.
Okay.
And I think that is what I did. I followed my heart. I looked at what I really enjoy doing, what gives me satisfaction, what gives me a sense of well-being and
sense of contentment.
So doing what I enjoy doing. Now, as a result of which I have not made too much money because that was never my objective. Now, money came. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Got it.
But that was not my objective. My objective was having fun doing what I'm doing. And I think and therefore I worked all these years with no pressure. And that facilitates the creativity. If there was pressure that I have to do so much within so much time, etc., then I believe that I might not have been as creative as I was.
Got it.
So that's one thing. And the other thing you asked me about my journey, the highlights. I think what one thing, like I shared with you, was about Francisco Martin's
Yes.
giving me the first order, which
That's
sort of
kind of a
encouraged,
pivotal point, yeah, starting point.
encouraged me to go. But after that, shoemaking continued just as a hobby. Until I met Wendell Rodrigues. And Wendell has been a great inspiration in my life. He's another guy who told me, follow your heart. This is what you want to do. Go for it. Encouraged me, and I believe Janota Goa rose to where it did, mainly because for a long time we rode piggyback on Wendell Rodrigues. And those were his words. He says, you can ride piggyback on me until you're free to go on your own.
Oh, it's such a inspiration, such a camaraderie you had, though. You are lucky to have a person like that. Great. And who are your clienteles of Janota Goa? Because it's handmade, you have a shop here.
Yeah. See, initially when we started, I think about 90% of our clients were the foreigners. Because those guys at that time, they were the only ones who appreciated handmade stuff and stuff that are little out of the box and not the very regular things. But I'm really happy to note that today 90% of my clients, our clients, are Indians.
Nice.
And may not be so many Goans. We don't have a large clientele in Goa. But from all the major cities, we have quite a big following.
Nice. Great to hear. Edwin Bob, you mentioned you were going to retire and you have given your enterprise to son. And what is keeping you busy these days?
Nilankur, this is a totally different
then designing?
Side. It's a different side of my life. You see, I have a long history of addiction to drugs and alcohol myself. That was a battle that I fought in the 70s and 80s. And finally, having come out of that, today I spend a lot of time helping other people who are afflicted by this disease of addiction, whether it's to drugs or alcohol or whatever. So, over the years, I have also been trained in counseling, and so now I am specializing in addiction counseling. So that is what takes up a lot of my time.
And where did you get this training? Like, did you it's like from a college, that kind of thing?
I worked for about 10 years in the 80s and 90s in a drug rehabilitation center. Now that was the first drug rehab center in Goa. And
in TV?
In TV. And it was the second drug rehab center in the country. So when I joined the center, I went off to Bombay. I joined St. Xavier's College, went back to college, and that is where I studied counseling. But after that, it was more work experience, and then the government got very proactive when they started having a lot of different programs, training programs, seminars, etc., which I had the privilege of attending a large number of those. And the last rehab center that I worked was a center called Wilson Smith in Lonavala. And that was run by a guy called Roy Tellis, who has a lot of experience working in the US with different approaches, different methods. So I was privileged to have worked with him and in his center there. And now, incidentally, he has relocated to Goa. And we have formed an association of a number of professionals working in the field, and we work together to deal and help people with this problem.
So now that you are working in de-addiction, where is the graph going from the 1970s, 1980s when you were learning counseling till now? Is the graph is going up, or I hope the graph is slowly coming down?
See, actually, I wouldn't go so much on whether it's going up or down, but there is a huge change. Like in the 80s, the drug of choice and the most commonly abused drugs, and which I also fell victim to, was heroin, morphine and heroin. Today that is changing to more party drugs and different types
Got
of
it,
drugs. But in Goa, what we find is that the most common drug, which is unfortunately number one legal and number two socially acceptable,
True.
is alcohol.
True.
And that is the oldest known drug, which is destroying the very fabric of our society. We see that almost every Goan is directly or indirectly somehow affected by this problem.
And any government initiative, any special initiative you are following to, like Alcoholics Anonymous is there, but any, rather than, I'm going to say, preventive measures, and is there anything?
I'm not sure about preventive measures, but the government in Goa has got a fairly good setup to deal with addiction.
Okay.
At the Institute of Psychiatry and Human Behavior in Bamboli, but more specialized is in the district hospitals of North Goa and South Goa.
Okay.
So there they have what they call the addiction treatment facility clinics, so with well-trained doctors, social workers, counselors, with the 10-15 bedded ward specially for detoxification. So the government, I think, is doing a great job as far as that is concerned. Yeah.
And you are doing awareness from your end for sure, I believe.
And you mentioned Alcoholics Anonymous. So programs like and fellowships like the Alcoholics Anonymous are also doing fantastic. Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship now I think is about 85 years old.
Yes.
And it has been helping millions of people all over the world. It's amazing.
I wish Janota Goa all the very best wishes, and I hope your son Aaron does carry on the legacy what you have started. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, audience. That was Edwin, and with his creative Janota Goa. You should check their shoes out. Maybe you will find it online. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.